I caught my wife cheating after nearly 20 years of marriage. Now she's desperate for forgiveness and proposing drastic changes while I consider divorce. What would your reaction be if you arrived home unexpectedly early and discovered your spouse with someone else in your bed? That was the sad situation at our next destination. This is a user-generated, lazy recommendation. I caught my wife cheating. I'm at a total loss. I do not know what to do. I was blinded by love and never expected this to happen to me. Not with her, my wife and dearest friend of almost 20 years. There were signs, but I missed them. Off the top of my mind, here are a few. I was texting unusually late at night. I went for after-work beverages with friends on a regular basis. This was unlike her, but I was delighted she was being social. She went to yoga once a week but didn't pay because one of her co-workers was the instructor, and she helped with setup and cleaning. I also thought she was incredibly stiff for someone who attended yoga. An unknown caller hangs up. We frequently answer each other's phones when we're nearby. Several times, she received a call from an unknown person who hung up as soon as I replied. We received a lot of spam calls, but they were mainly from telemarketers or debt collectors looking for the prior owner of the number. It is rarely a hang-up. I worked out of town and wasn't meant to return until tonight. We were scheduled to leave for a 2-week road trip tomorrow. Work was sluggish, so I came home yesterday afternoon. This trip was intended to provide us with some alone time after spending so much time with family and friends this summer. When I arrived home, there was a truck in my driveway that I did not recognize. My neighbor recently asked me how I liked the new truck, but I assumed he was incorrect and didn't think much of it. As soon as I saw the truck, I had a dreadful gut feeling. I loved and trusted my wife totally, yet that sensation was powerful. I sneaked around the side of the house and into our bedroom window. It was open and I could hear them as I approached. When I peeked through the window, my worst fears were confirmed. They were right there, naked, on my bed. I walked away. I've been resisting the impulse to do something I know I'll regret. At this point, I'm not sure I care what happens to me. I spent the night at my family's cabin and drank everything. Today, on my way home, I considered confronting her but decided against it. I am not ready. I can only feel fury. All I can think of is violence. I'm not in a good place right now. It's not good enough to see her. I am back at the cabin right now. I've been staring at my 60-ounce bottle of rum for an hour. I want to get drunk and forget about it, but I don't want to make stupid judgments. I understand that this is a key moment in my life, and my actions in the coming days will shape the rest of my life. That is where I am. I need help. I am not ready to speak with family or friends, so I am reaching out to strangers. In this world edit, I've opted not to drink the rum, but it's still close by for now. I called my brother who is on his way and should arrive in the next couple of hours. My wife just texted me that she loves me and can't wait to go on our vacation. I've not yet responded. I've seen a few comments and queries that keep coming up, and I wanted to provide clarification in addition to my little edit. If you can't tell, I am feeling much better today. The discomfort almost entirely subsided. I still feel like I was punched in the belly, but I've started looking ahead. This does not seem correct to me. Is this the quiet before the storm, or am I just incredibly resilient? Regarding the questions and comments I've received, here are some cliff notes to explain several points. When I mentioned wife and best friend, I was referring to the 2 roles my wife has played in my life. The other guy wasn't my best buddy or anyone I know. I didn't get a good look at him, but based on the fast view and his vehicle, I don't think he's someone I know. We do not have children. We do plan to have them shortly, though. We recently sold our home and we're planning to relocate closer to my employment in September when the new owners took possession. I'm going to thank my neighbor, but I'm going to do it unexpectedly, just like he did for me. Well, Opie, that had to be one of the worst things to return home to after a lengthy work trip. I am so sorry that occurred to you. As for us, the journey is only beginning. So buckle up, and let's start with the first update. When my brother came, we had a long conversation. He has been my true best friend, and I realized I needed to remember that and trust that he will always be there for me without judgment. I would feel the same way for him. He genuinely defines what true friendship is. Even if we do clash on occasion because I was scheduled to be home last night, I opted to answer my wife's text. We are not permitted to use phones on site. Therefore, it was appropriate for me to solely text her. She knows how easy it is for me to slip in some texts. I wrote her and said that I needed to go to one of my company's remote sites and wouldn't be able to call her until the end of the weekend. I informed her that I would cancel all of the reservations and rebook later. She suggested she could bring her closest friend with her this weekend to the romantic bed and breakfast on the vineyard that I had reserved. I knew it wasn't the best buddy she wanted me to believe would be there. I informed her that I had already given it to my brother and his wife because it was non-refundable and that they would repay me in a month. I canceled all reservations this morning save the romantic one. My brother is going with me. Fortunately, the hotel allowed us to move from the honeymoon suite to a room with 2 beds. There is also a beautiful lake nearby with boat rentals available. So this has evolved into a long-awaited fishing excursion with my brother. This means I'm free for the weekend. I don't have to write or talk to her for a few days, which reduces tension and gives me more time to consider. I am currently considering a divorce. I really can't see it any other way. My brother is supportive of this. However, he has urged me to wait a few weeks before speaking with someone. His wife has a friend who is a couples counselor and is willing to speak with me on Monday. I don't think it'll change my mind, but it could help me untangle some of this mess. I'm also taking a lot of advice here and starting to meet with lawyers. At the very least, prepare for what I believe is unavoidable. I want to accomplish things correctly. I never saw her as someone who would try to deceive me, but I also never anticipated her cheating. So I think I should be prepared for everything. That was a brief update, but it allows us to see what's on OP's mind at the moment. Now let us move on to the next update. And this one is enormous and contains a lot of information. So let us continue with that immediately. A lot has happened during the last several days. My brother Matt and I drove nearly 5 hours to the bed and breakfast in the vineyard. I sincerely appreciate him being there for me throughout this time. It was more of a venting session than anything else, but it did help to clear my mind. We went fishing, but it was not enjoyable. We both caught a couple of trout that we had to release owing to their size, but the B&B owner provided us with some munchies. They worked out great. On Sunday, we drove back to Matt's. He lives in the next town over, about an hour away from where I live. Jen, Matt's wife, was there when we arrived, and we all sat down and opened a bottle of wine together. We were chilling in the cooler. This is when my weekend officially ended. Jen informed me that while we were away, she chose to spy on my wife. She told me that the gentleman spent the entire night at my house on Friday, but she arrived just as he was leaving on Saturday morning. She followed him home and discovered the flat where he resided. My wife stayed there on Saturday night. The following night, she texted me stating she loved and missed me. Jen stated that she was dividing her time between visiting family members in my town and stalking my wife. She claimed that she caught my wife leaving his flat on Sunday morning and snapped a few photos of them hugging and kissing before getting into her car. I do not want to see them. That very much closed the deal for me. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust her again if she can tell me she loves me while dating someone else. Nonetheless, I determined not to react impulsively based on emotions. I need to be cool and composed. That's when Jen informed me that Sharon was coming over for dinner. Sharon is the counselor, and Jen scheduled an appointment for me to clarify. She had never met my wife, and it was my first time meeting her as well. Sharon was a very kind person, and we got along well. After dinner, Sharon and I went for a walk through Matt's neighborhood to walk the dogs and have a quiet discussion. Sharon was very helpful since she was a good listener and made me feel like I didn't need to be guarded. It was therapeutic to be so open and honest about my sentiments with my brother. This was really different and much needed. It's the same reason I enjoy writing this on Reddit. It's a venting session that helps me sort through some of the confusion in my thoughts. Our session lasted an hour, and Sharon's only actual suggestion was to not put off the conversation with my wife. She told me that the longer I wait, the more difficult it will be to talk to her about this. She stated, "I need clarity more than anything at this point, and my wife is the only person who can provide it to me." Later that night, Jen and Matt invited me to remain with them for as long as necessary. I knew Matt and I had an expiration date for living in close quarters with each other, so I spoke with my supervisor, who was able to place me in corporate housing. I've been staying there every other week for a while, but I have to leave on my days off. He managed to make it possible for me to work full-time for a few months. If I need it, I opted to reschedule with Sharon for later in the week. I decided to talk to Feist for the first session. She agreed. I spent the night of Sunday lying in bed contemplating how to approach this. I struggled with this because even the imagined scenario made me furious or sad. I decided to just wing it. I am generally good under pressure. The next day I awoke and said my goodbyes to Matt and Jennifer. I drove home, wondering if he would be there when I got there. Then I reasoned that it would most likely put me back in my angry state. I went a few days ago. I decided to conduct a drive-by first. Neither his truck nor my wife's automobile were there. I went inside and got some essentials and items I didn't want to leave with before heading over to the guy's flat. Her car was not present either, but his truck was. I decided to write her and ask where she was. She stated that she was going to grab groceries. I trust her so little right now that I drove by the grocery store and confirmed her presence. I feel terrible confessing that I did it. But my trust has been violated, and this is the only way I can be assured of anything. I contacted her again, telling her to simply come home because we needed to talk. She wrote back, "What is wrong?" I merely responded by saying she needed to be honest, and then I shut off my phone. She arrived home 15 minutes later. When she entered, she came over to greet me with a hug and kiss like she always did. I turned away from her. She asked me again what was wrong, so I told her to start being honest with me. She acted stupid, claiming she had no idea what I was talking about. I said, "Okay, if you can't be honest, I am leaving." She panicked at this point and asked, "Are you talking about yoga?" I assumed it was a start. When I asked her what she was talking about, she said that she hadn't been going to yoga. "If you were not going to yoga, where were you going?" And she explained that she was going for walks to relax because she had been so anxious lately. I asked her what had stressed her out so much and why she felt the need to lie to me about what she was doing. She blamed the forthcoming relocation and deflected, saying she didn't know what to tell me. So I kept pushing and stated so. "You decided to lie. What was your concern when you told me you were going for a stroll to relieve stress?" She stated that she did not intend to lie and that she was concerned that she would add to my stress, to which I responded that I was not stressed and that she did not appear to be telling me the truth. She astonished me. "What do you mean?" I glanced at her and said, "I believe you are lying about more than just skipping yoga. I'm asking you again to be honest. You have already lied to me, therefore this will not work if you continue to lie." She attempted to deflect once more, stating she didn't know what else to say, and followed up with, "Oh, you're talking about last weekend when I went out for drinks with some pals and arrived home late. I had a hunch this bothered you. I had no idea she went for drinks or stayed out late. I was at work a few hours away, so I questioned her about whether it was what she actually did or if she was lying again. She clarified that she went out for drinks that night but did not see the best friend she was meant to be with. So I followed up by asking who she saw. And she said, "No one. I just drank alone." Of course, I wasn't buying it and my patience was running out. So I asked her if it was an option now that she was drinking alone, to which she says, "Yeah, I might have a problem." I encourage her to put a stop to her drinking addiction and say that she has one more chance to be honest. Or I was leaving. She glanced at me and replied, "I don't know what else to say." So I stood up and left. Usually after we have a fight, I go for a drive to avoid her. She presumably assumed this was the same. Then she realized I'd taken my clothes, toiletries, and the Xbox. That was when she started blowing up my phone. I informed her that I gave her the opportunity to be honest, but she didn't. So there's nothing more to say. She begged and pleaded with me to come home and discuss things in person. She said she had no idea why I was so furious or what I believed she had done. She often stated that she loved me and would never hurt me. Just hearing her say it ripped a new hole in my chest. It was always reassuring phrases that I believed wholeheartedly. Now it's a dull, jagged dagger cutting at my heart in the most agonizing way. I couldn't take it, so I hung up. She called back around 40 times before I was prepared to respond again. This time she said, "Did you talk to Karen? Who's the best friend?" I inquired why, and she said to come home. I do not want to say something over the phone. I agreed and drove for a bit longer to get my heart rate down. Then I went home and she began with, "I presume you spoke with Karen." I simply stare at her. So she goes on to say that a few weeks ago, while I was at work, they went for drinks. When a few of the males started buying them drinks, they simply played along. When they were leaving, one of the guys attempted to kiss her, but she quickly pushed away and informed them that she was married. Then she stated that she felt awful about it and wanted to tell me, but she's an idiot and decided to keep it from me. She also claims that Karen hooked up with the other guy and offered his friend my wife's phone information without asking. He has texted her several times subsequently, but she has never responded. After that, I just ask her to show me her phone and she hands it to me. Except for myself and her mother, there were no texts. She never deletes texts. So this was new. I looked at her images, which were likewise clean, but then I went through the deleted photos and discovered one additional guy I didn't recognize. I asked her who it was, and she said it was the guy who tried to kiss her. I followed up by asking her why she took a picture of him, and she blamed herself again, saying I was being foolish. I wasn't going to let her get away with that, so I pointed out that it wasn't a justification and asked her to explain why she did it. She said she didn't know. I'm growing bored of this entire affair and ask if that's all she wants to tell me or if there's anything else. She claims it is all she can think of. I departed again. I did not want to be provoked. Truth. I got into my pickup and drove away. She hurried outside to stop me, but I was already out of reach. I went to a neighboring park and sat on my tailboard eating lunch, trying to figure out what to do next. While there, I began to recall other things that I should have been more aware of. I was working a weekend shift and went to bed early. My wife went out to the club with several of her girlfriends. I awoke at 4 a.m. She still wasn't home. I contacted her several times but received no answer. About 30 minutes later, she called back and asked if I could come get her. When I picked her up, she told me that they had attempted to hail a taxi but were unsuccessful. A pair of males her friend knew stopped and offered them a ride, but they preferred to stop at home first. When they arrived at the guy's house, her married buddy entered a room with one of the males. My wife stated that she spent some time looking for her, but eventually gave up and had a drink in the kitchen with the housemates while she waited. She claims she didn't hear her phone when I tried to call. We fought over it, and she was disgusted by her friend's actions, so she cut him out of her life. I thought it was over. She also traveled to another city to visit a close friend. It was a planned girls' night. There were 4 girls getting drunk and watching films in their pajamas. At least that is what I was informed. Then she called me at around 1 a.m. to say goodnight. We talked for approximately 20 minutes, and she kept telling me that they were having a terrific girls' night. Then I heard a male voice in the background. I questioned who it was, and she initially denied hearing anything. Then it occurred again, loudly. She could not refute it, so she was like, "Oh yeah, an ex-friend brought along a couple of guys. Everyone here is quite upset about it." She was inebriated and 3 hours away. She gave me no choice but to trust her again. We argued over it. And why? She refused to tell me they were present. She promised never to put herself in such a scenario again. Clearly, that did not stick. After remembering all of those things and our chats about them, I was ready to give it one more attempt. I turned back on my phone, and it almost immediately rang. I responded, and she screamed for me to come home. I drove back to the house. When I walked inside, she confronted me with tears in her eyes. She sat on the couch, repeating, I'm so sorry, I asked her. Sorry for what? She started bouncing back and forth like a mad person. It took her approximately 5 minutes to gather her breath enough to talk, after which she admitted to lying about the guy who attempted to kiss her. I glanced at her and asked her to explain what happened. She claims that the 4 of them returned to his apartment that night and played around. I knew it was more than that, but simply hearing her say it made me dizzy. It felt like the space was becoming smaller, and there were a million people speaking into my ears at once. I guess I was experiencing a panic attack. I went to the restroom and cleaned my face with cold water until everything returned to normal. I go back and ask her what she did. She tried to evade it, but when I persisted, she admitted that he touched her and offered him her head. I knew that wasn't all of it, so I asked her if that was it. So she said yes. I'm very upset at this point, and tell her that I'm done playing the trick or truth game and that until she tells me everything right now, we'll never speak again. She began crying again, and it took a few minutes before she was able to speak. Now she admits that they met again and slept together, which was quickly followed by, I'm so sorry. I love you and will go to any length to make up for this, now that I know the truth. I asked her just once. She pauses and asks that if she tells me the truth, please give her the opportunity to make amends. I tell her I'll think about it, and then the truth slips out. She confesses that they had an affair and were hooking up while I was out of town for work. It has been going on for nearly a month. She tells me he's married and they're ready to divorce. I inquire if he knows she is married, and she responds yes. Then I question if he's having an affair since his marriage is failing. Does that imply she believes our marriage is failing? She adds that she does not believe ours is failing. Then continue to say, I'm so stupid, I hate myself. Please do not abandon me. I can repair it. I inquired how she would do it, and she responded that she would do whatever I requested. So I asked her if she was wearing my shoes or her affair partner's white shoes. What would make this better for her? She responds, stating that knowing the truth and trusting me to mean what I say are important. Then she says, you can trust me. I messed up and won't do it again. I asked whether she was his wife. Would she like to know the truth? She says, yes, and I answer, then fix this. She looks at me and asks if she should call the wife. I agree that if she believes that is what she wants. So she tried calling but never received a response. A few minutes later, her mobile called. It was identified as Karen work. She appeared shocked. So I knew it wasn't Karen. I inquired whether it was him. She said it was, so I answered, and he, being the coward he is, said, oh, I must have the wrong number. I answered, no. This is the spouse of the girl you have been cheating on. I am going to let you speak with her because she has something to tell you. I passed her the phone. She claims she told me everything and that I know the whole truth. They're finished, and it was only a fling. And now he must never contact her again. I demanded to see the phone before she hung off and asked him who his divorce lawyer was, to which he said he wasn't getting divorced. So I asked him why he told my wife he was, and he says he didn't. Then I asked to talk with his wife because I believed she had the same right to know about this as I did. He answers, please, man, I didn't realize she was married. Don't wreck my marriage due to a mistake. And I answer that he ruined my life due to a mistake. It's only fair that I inform his wife. He begs me not to tell her she was at work and promises to tell her everything when she gets home. I said, okay, do that, and hung up. I then turned to my wife and asked if she knew where his wife worked and what her name was. She did. My wife called and asked for her at work. She did get her on the phone and urged her to sit. This woman stated that she was just about to leave for the day and would call my wife back from her car. She did. Her first question is, what's going on? My wife tells her that she has something dreadful to tell her, that she does not want to cause any accidents, and begs her not to drive. Obviously, the wife becomes concerned and inquires as to what happened to the fair partner. My wife informs her that he is fine and in their flat at the moment. My wife then goes on to explain, I'm just letting you know that we've been having an affair for the past month. I'm coming clean to my husband right now, and I thought you deserved the same respect. A fair partner's wife remained silent for almost a minute before saying that if this was a cruel prank, she'd find out who she was. Then she hung up. My wife received a text from Karen less than 10 minutes later. Thank you for your work. You've just ruined my life. I picked up the phone and wrote back. You have damaged 4 lives and 2 marriages. Don't forget that this was entirely your fault, you piece of junk. For the following hour, my wife begged and pleaded for me to stay with her. She offered counseling. She promised to never leave my side. She even offered me sexual favors. This was everything I expected. Thank you for your remarks here. She then suggested we go on vacation. Her explanation for treating us was that we needed some time away. We need to spend some quality time together because my job schedule has been separating us recently. Also, she said precisely what I expected. She was not expecting me to tell her that I had gone anyway. She also didn't anticipate me telling her that I had already scheduled counseling for myself. She didn't expect me to inform her that I busted her in my own bed. I could only suppose she didn't expect me to already have a place to stay. When I told her all of this, she collapsed to the floor crying. She began saying that she did not deserve to live. She advised me that I should quit the relationship immediately because she is too horrible to be with anyone. It continued on like this for a long time. I stayed for 4 hours, listening to her make excuses before attempting to hug, cuddle, or even give me a head if I would just stay and work through this with her. Finally, I contacted Karen and informed her that her unfaithful buddy was suicidal and that she should come keep an eye on her. Then I left. It's been almost a day since that happened, and I haven't spoken to her since. She's been calling and messaging me all day. Her friends and family have called and texted me throughout the day. Everyone has a different justification or request for empathy. Her father is the only one who has written to me, telling me that I must do what is best for me and that he will always love me as a son, no matter what happens. Reading it prompted me to cry for the first time since all of this started. Tomorrow I'll meet with Sharon, my counselor, and Thursday I'll see a lawyer. I believe I know where this is headed, but until it happens, I'm unsure of anything. I apologize for the unnecessarily long narrative. It simply helps to vent in this way. Again, I greatly appreciate all of the comments and messages. People sharing their own tales like this make me feel less shattered and more hopeful. I genuinely appreciate everything you have said and done for me, and that concludes this update. We have one more last update on this subject, and then I'll provide my commentary. The only thing I'll say now is that I think OP did an excellent job of getting the truth from his unfaithful wife. It was very good for him. Now let us move on to the final update. This past week has been pretty eventful. I've been moving back and forth between camp and my brother's house. I want to be as light on them as possible. Therefore, I only stay at night when I have an early appointment. My firm has permitted me to take a few weeks off for personal reasons, which has been quite beneficial. I have continued to see Sharon, the therapist. I've seen her 3 times now. Personally, I feel better than I did last week. So while I don't think our visits are particularly productive, I do think they provide an opportunity for me to clear my mind. As a result, I'll continue on for the time being. I met with a lawyer last Thursday about their advice. I compiled a list of all assets and finances, including debt. I immediately went to the bank and asked them to suspend our accounts. This prevents anyone from withdrawing money without the other person present. We each have pay deposit dates in our own accounts, so neither of us will be unable to access fresh money, only old and shared funds. The lawyer suggested that I not face her until I had served her with the papers, but it is already too late. Throughout the week, I was continuously receiving calls and texts from my wife, her family, and her friends. This past weekend, my sister-in-law organized a family gathering at the cabin. I went and had to break the news to my family. At least it's out in the open now, and I can involve them in my recovery. Things were going well until Saturday night. At approximately 8 p.m., I was sitting around the fire with my brother and dad when my wife's automobile arrived. My brother, Matt, assured me that he would take care of it. My father and I decided to go for a walk around the property, out of sight of the driveway. We were barely in the woods when I heard my wife yell at my brother to get out of her way. She had a couple of her friends with her, and they were also yelling at Matt. Telling him to mind his own business, he made a heroic effort, but it was finally too much for him. She sped by him and dashed directly towards us. She must have seen his head in that position. My father volunteered to deal with her, but I said I would deal with her. My wife, Kate, came running over to me, weeping. She instantly reached for a hug, and I didn't stop her, but I didn't hug her back. She asked me to just communicate with her. I agreed, and we strolled around the property paths to get some privacy. Kate informs me that the other guy's wife has left him. She told me that he called and threatened to end his life, blaming everything on her. She alleges she instructed them to simply do it and has not spoken with him since. She then takes out a piece of paper and begins outlining ways in which she vows to make it up to me again. This is everything she offered on the first day. Everything from marriage therapy to sexual desires. Then she got me off guard. She claims she doesn't want to keep living this way. She stated that she wants us both to quit our careers and relocate overseas, stop bringing up the beach, which we've always discussed. She claimed she'd go right away if I went with her. To put this into context, this was the only thing that came to mind this week when I was attempting to imagine my life after divorce. I considered a complete reset of everything. I am already undergoing a big transformation. I might as well put another piece to it and do anything I want. Hearing her want the same thing reminded me of how much I missed her and wanted to be with her. That was the moment I realized I needed to end the conversation. I walked her back to her car where her friends waited. I told her that I would be willing to talk on the phone, but I couldn't promise anything else. It had cooled down enough to go. We've talked on the phone every night since, and it's always the same. She screams and begs for another opportunity. I feel angry with her for what she did and want to hang up. I'm now having a hard time missing her. She was my best friend for decades, and losing that person to talk to is difficult. It's awful to realize that all of our shared ambitions and aspirations have been thrown away. I want nothing more than to pack everything and start over somewhere else. I want to be with her. But she ruined it. She stole that from me, and that was it. This is all the information we got from the OP. Hopefully, he was able to complete the divorce and then relocate to a beach location to open his bar. At least we know he confronted his adulterous wife, and the affair partner got what he deserved. So this video has already been lengthy enough. I hope OP is having fun wherever he is and is satisfied with his life. On a side note, how many of you would like to have a beach bar like the OP mentioned? I know that's one of my retirement fantasies, so we've reached the end of the video. I really hope you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Also, click the bell button to be notified whenever I release a new video. Also, here are some more videos from my channel that you might like. Having stated that,